always thought the hardest part of motherhood would be letting go, watching my daughter step into the world as her own woman. I never imagined the hardest part would be the moment my husband stood up in front of 100 people, our family, our friends, at our daughter's graduation dinner, and announced, "I've decided to start a new life without you." At first, I thought I heard wrong. The clinking of forks against plates stopped. The hum of soft jazz in the background fell into a suffocating silence. My daughter's smile froze. And then, I saw her, sitting just 3 seats down at our table, where our closest friends and family were gathered, was a woman I had only seen once before, in vague social settings, his co-worker, his business trip companion. That woman didn't flinch. She looked right at me as if she had been waiting for this moment, like it was her graduation too. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, I smiled. "Congratulations on your honesty," I said, lifting my glass of white wine. Then I reached into my purse and handed him the envelope. He looked confused for a moment, as if he had no idea what it could possibly be. He opened it, and the second his eyes scanned the top page, he froze. Then he started to scream. Not yell, not argue, scream. A raw, guttural sound like an animal in pain. Gasps erupted around the room. People stood. My daughter looked between us with horror, and I walked out, heels clicking on the marble floor, posture straight, head high, without saying another word. What was in that envelope? Let me tell you a little story. 2 months earlier, I had started noticing things, small things, receipts that didn't make sense, charges for luxury spas he never took me to, a forgotten login on our shared laptop that led me to his second phone number, hotel bookings, private chats, a folder named client proposals that had photos, intimate ones, of him, of her. I didn't confront him, no. I did what any intelligent, betrayed woman with a plan would do. I smiled. I played dumb. I started collecting everything, screenshots, emails, even recorded a few of his calls with her. And then I visited his office. I booked a meeting with the head of compliance at his firm. You see, he wasn't just having an affair. He was violating company policy. Sleeping with a junior consultant under his direct supervision? That wasn't just immoral. That was fireable. But I didn't stop there. He had made the mistake of putting both our names on certain investment properties. But what he didn't know was that I had moved them into a trust. My trust. Legally, all in my name now. Still, the crown jewel was inside that envelope. And I'll tell you what it was. In the next part. Inside that envelope was a detailed dossier. Not just the screenshots and emails of his affair, but a copy of the formal complaint I filed with his firm's HR and compliance department. Signed, sealed, and timestamped. There was also a copy of a court order, filed just the day before, freezing all joint accounts and securing temporary ownership of the marital home under my name. And finally, there was a letter from my lawyer, informing him that divorce proceedings had officially begun, citing infidelity and emotional cruelty. He hadn't even known I'd hired a lawyer, but I had, months ago. The man who once controlled our finances, our social calendar, and my self-worth now looked like a child who had just been told the house was on fire. I didn't look back that night. Not when I walked out of the dinner hall. Not when my phone lit up with messages. Not when his sister called me crying, saying, I had no idea. But I did glance in the mirror before bed. My mascara was perfect, my lipstick still sharp, and for the first time in years, I liked the woman staring back at me. The days that followed were chaos. For him. His company suspended him within 48 hours of receiving the complaint. Not because they cared about his marriage, but because the woman he was seeing had now come forward, claiming she'd been pressured. Which was interesting, considering the videos I'd found said otherwise, but it worked in my favor. He tried to call me, of course, left voicemails ranging from rage to begging. Let's talk about this privately. Don't destroy me. We can fix this. No, we couldn't. See, this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about disrespect. He had brought her to my daughter's graduation, to our family's table, and he did it with full confidence that I would sit there and swallow it like I always had. He didn't expect a woman who was done playing small. He didn't expect that I'd already moved half our savings into a private account, or that I'd changed the locks, or that I'd told our daughter the truth, not in a way that made her hate her father, but in a way that made her respect her mother. And then, the media got involved. A small blog post on a legal gossip site picked up the story. Executive at a prestigious firm caught in scandal, possible sexual misconduct, real estate frozen, marriage imploding. And guess who leaked it? Oh, don't worry. I used a burner email and a little finesse, but yes, that was me. Revenge isn't just fire and fury. Sometimes it's a quiet match, lit slowly and left to burn down everything they thought they had control over. But the best part? That hadn't even been the real revenge yet. That was just foreplay. 2 weeks after the dinner, he was officially unemployed. The firm didn't want the scandal. They gave him a sanitized resignation package to keep the press quiet, but the damage was done. He went from wearing a $3,000 suit to sitting in sweatpants on his best friend's couch. She, the mistress, vanished. Oh, not completely. She tried sticking around at first, but when the legal trouble started and the money stopped flowing, she moved on. I heard she's dating some finance bro in the city now. They always land on their feet until they don't. My ex tried to act like a victim for a while. Told mutual friends I was ruthless, calculating, that I'd trapped him. Oh, sweetie. You handed me the scissors and then laid down on the floor. You see, I had spent years being his shadow, supporting his career, keeping the house running while he traveled, smiling through his business dinners while he made me feel invisible. I gave him the best years of my life. And he thought I would just go quietly? No. I was done being quiet. But let me take you back again. About 6 months before that dinner, I started going to therapy. Not because I thought something was wrong with me, but because I needed to remember who I was before he told me who to be. And in one of those sessions, my therapist asked me, "What does justice look like to you? Not anger, not pettiness, not revenge, justice." And I said, I want him to feel what it's like to lose something he took for granted. So I made a plan. I got everything in order. Legal, financial, emotional. I lined up allies. I hired a forensic accountant who found some shady tax moves he'd made, little things easily overlooked, but not anymore. Then I reached out to his boss anonymously. Then I booked that dinner venue. And the most poetic part? He thought the celebration was for him. He gave a toast at the start of the night about legacy and family. He was smiling, basking in attention, while his own noose tightened around his career, his image, and his future. And when he dropped the bomb, thinking he was the one in control, I had already pulled the pin from the grenade. I didn't just take him down, I dismantled him with precision. The last time I saw him in person was in court. He showed up disheveled, eyes sunken, trying to act composed. I walked in wearing a navy pantsuit, not a tear in sight, surrounded by a legal team he didn't even know I could afford. He reached out to say something as I passed. I didn't stop walking. The judge granted me the house, full custody of our daughter, though she was old enough to decide anyway, and a significant portion of the assets. Thanks to that forensic accountant, he was lucky not to leave in handcuffs. But that still wasn't the end, because there was one more thing I had planned, and I promise you, it was delicious. After the court case, he thought the worst was over. Men like him always do. They survive by believing the consequences are temporary. That time or charm or some poor girl's sympathy will save them. But I wasn't done. You see, he still had one thing left that mattered to him more than anything else: his image. Not just the public version, the LinkedIn, the mentor of young professionals, the pillar of the community. No, I'm talking about the private image, the way he saw himself in the mirror every morning. The version of him that thought he was too clever to ever get caught, too valuable to ever be replaced. That was the part I decided to destroy next. He had spent years building a small side brand, coaching up-and-coming executives, speaking at conferences, hosting private seminars for young men trying to break into the corporate world. He was grooming himself for a TED Talk one day. Leadership with integrity. Can you imagine? So I did what any resourceful woman would do. I created a fake persona, a man named Eli Davis, a fictional HR consultant and speaker. I built him a social presence, gave him a sleek website, testimonials, and a network of fake contacts. All of it AI generated, scrubbed clean, believable down to the email signature. And Eli reached out to organizers who had previously hired my ex to speak. In those emails, Eli very delicately pointed out the scandal, the ongoing whisper campaign, and offered a list of alternative speakers with clean records and better reputations. Within a month, my ex was quietly dropped from every engagement he had lined up for the next 6 months. But that wasn't the best part. A conference that he once keynoted issued a public statement about reevaluating speaker standards, and his photo was removed entirely from their archives. He was being erased, silently, efficiently, without even knowing it was me. Now you might ask, why go so far? Why not just let go? Because he humiliated me, not in private, not in secret, but in front of the people I loved, in front of my daughter, while holding the hand of the woman he betrayed me with. He had built a whole life on being the man everyone should trust. I was simply the woman who made sure the truth caught up with him. And while he tried to rebuild, his career in ruins, his reputation bleeding out, do you know what I did? I bloomed. I used the settlement to open a boutique consulting firm, mine, my name on the wall, my rules, my values. I surrounded myself with people who saw me, not as an accessory to someone else's empire, but as the empire herself. I took salsa classes, I traveled, I repainted the kitchen. I started laughing again, Not the careful laugh I used to have around him, but the full bodied kind that comes from not caring who's listening. My daughter? She watched me rise. She told me one night, Mom, you didn't just walk away, you walked through fire and came out wearing heels. That was the moment I knew. I didn't just win, I healed. One final chapter left. A year passed, and while I thrived, he faded. Rumors circled that he was living off his savings, what was left after the settlement. He tried to launch a podcast, one of those reinvent yourself after failure vanity projects. It barely made it past episode 3. No sponsors, no audience, just him, rambling into a microphone, trying to sound like a man who hadn't been publicly undressed. Then one day, I got a message. From her. Not a call, not an apology, just a short DM on a social platform. I didn't know he was married. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Not because I was still angry, but because I no longer needed to acknowledge the people who once tried to play me for a fool. I had something better than closure. I had peace. One sunny afternoon, I was walking out of a cafe with my daughter when I saw him. He was on the other side of the street, sitting alone at an outdoor table, hunched over a laptop, looking smaller somehow, grayer, like a man who'd lived 10 years in one. He saw me too, and for a moment we just stared. No words, no wave, just silence. Then he stood, as if about to cross the street, like he wanted to say something. Maybe explain, maybe ask, maybe beg. But I turned, took my daughter's hand, and we walked away. Because what do you say to someone who burned down your home, not realizing you were the one holding the insurance policy? Nothing. Some things don't deserve a second glance. People often ask me if I regret anything, if I'd go back and do it differently. And I tell them this: regret is for those who stayed silent. I spoke, I planned, I acted, I turned pain into power, betrayal into rebirth. I didn't just get even, I got better. I became the version of myself I always knew was in there, the one he tried to diminish, the one they all underestimated. So no, I don't regret a thing, because at my daughter's graduation, when he tried to break me in front of everyone, I had already written the final chapter, and I was the one holding the pen.